Hello Summoners and welcome to another episode of FEHology, the study of Fire Emblem Heroes. My name is Joel and it's been 2 seasons that we've been playing with these Brave units now. I want to do a recap of what we've found because these units aren't always what they seem at first glance. It's also important to do this before the bonus seasons come because every one of these will look busted beyond belief. But I'm going to skip right to my conclusion, and that's the greatest part about Choose Your Legends 5 is how unique each one of these units are. We don't really have a plug-and-play tank or the most dominant legendary Sigurd-style defense unit. Each one of these requires a special team around them, but is competent in their own niche. We have the player phase queen in Marianne, the hybrid vantage sweeper in Marth, the tank buster in Eirika, and the obstruction specialist in Gatekeeper. But let's dive in and analyze some gameplay and the different findings from each one. We'll start with my personal favorite, which is Marianne.
Please, Goddess, lend me the courage I need.
So let me be clear on my Marianne bias. I was working on an Uller Force team before she arrived and just got amazingly lucky that she slid right in and made it way more powerful than I ever expected it to be. If you have a Wings of Mercy beacon setup, she will be an immediate asset. Here's the thing. With the introduction of Note, Light Season has become incredibly aggressive. I don't have to tell you guys this, but being able to easily set up player phase strategies to counter some of these teams has become essential. Tanks just can't keep up, and I'm not saying that they aren't useful, because they still are. I'm just saying that teams are able to sell out on nukes to the point that even Brave Hector is starting to have difficulties. Quite frankly, Marianne takes Gale Force clears and makes them easier. Most Light Season teams are selling out on defense stacking to stop Milla, and in comes a unit that gives you an extra action, has greater survivability through her tome, and takes advantage of a weaker stat. That's all very nice, but let's dive into some gameplay and see how she works in practice. So what you're watching here is my very first clear with Marianne, and you need to understand something. At her base, she's a support unit. So you're not going to see her just take over a map. But the piece that she does perform is integral. I mean, she is basically a dancer that gets an attack as well. So she's taking your best unit, giving them an extra turn, and taking out a unit herself because she really does have a lot of combat ability. The fact that she has that damage reduction in her tome and the speed to keep the other unit from doubling is just huge. I mean, in this case, we're taking out Legendary Azura, which is not great. But the fact that we're giving Uller a second turn and, well, a third and a fourth and all that great stuff, another turn, and letting us clear the map without really ever allowing the offense to do, or the defense to do anything is amazing. Marianne is taking this team, which is not exactly the strongest, I recognize that, but she's making it trivial. That's amazing, because we all have really hard matches throughout the week. It's nice to have one that isn't so hard now and again. Summoners, this second team, this is the reason that Marianne is great. This is the reason I am so excited about this unit. This team has all the ingredients of a hyper-aggressive defense. You've got Bridal Catria, Legendary Lilina, Winter Burnie, Note. This is a lot of damage coming at you. My joke has been that Marianne makes me look like a much better player than I am, but this clear really drives this home. Now, her combat potential really comes to light here by the fact that she actually defeats Legendary Lilina. That's a lot of res, Summoners, and also a lot of attack. And she absorbs all that, keeps Uller going, and again, makes this just a clean clear. I've got to tell you, the best part about these videos is how fast it makes me look like I make decisions. But this truly was easy just because of Marianne. I don't have it on display, but this is very similar to how the team would function versus a Sigurd line. The map has to be so open for all the threats to engage that it's easy to get players into position, especially with the safety fence. The combination of the safety fence and Marianne has been incredible against teams like this, and it's clearly on display here. So you've seen her in action. The nice thing about her is she has a very clear role. There are teams that are trying to take advantage of her on defense, but these kind of strategies here, this is where she really shines. Now, things are about to get a little murkier with this next unit that we'll talk about.
I can overcome any difficulty with my friends beside me.
Let's cut straight to it. Marth is not Brave Dimitri, but he is an enemy phase tank. Summoners, enemy phase tanks age the worst out of any other type of unit. I know you're all thinking of Brave Hector, but he actually proves my point. Look at what they had to do to him to make him good. They basically made him not an armor. There's a chance we see that with Brave Dimitri and Marth someday, but just understand their limitations and their shelf life. Now, Marth has a few things going for him. The first is he's a fantastic arena unit. He has the highest BST of the bunch, he can pack an amazing punch and gets Vantage, which is not a skill you get to use in arena much. But what we really care about is Aether Raids, and I'm finding him to be more complex than I originally thought. This might be best explained through gameplay though. Now, you could set up Marth to have a special ready with Vantage on turn 1, but that isn't always the best course of action. The first unit that's going to hit you is the biggest, baddest unit out there, which translated means the AI will prioritize a unit that won't die and a unit that will do the most damage. A lot of these units have special cooldown reduction like this Eirika, so you can find yourself in a spot where you've actually charged the enemy unit special. The other problem is getting 60 buff points on your entire team. Yes, this is easy to do, I'm not disputing that, but you're wasting your skills. Marth needs every single point of attack he can get, and if those spaces can be used for drives, chills, ruses, sabotages, or whatever else you need to take advantage of that. You can see this replay that I have Vantage and end up setting up Eirika with Regnal Astra, because Marth strikes first. Now, Marth ends up surviving this easily because of damage reduction, but I probably would have done better just attack stacking and allowing Eirika to strike first. Marth really does rely quite heavily on getting one-shots. Anything I can do to help him, I should be. The other thing is Marth's special is going to buff everyone anyway. Also, can I point out what just happened there where Marth took out Syros? I cannot tell you how happy that made me. I mean, it was easy. But let's move on to our next replay. This clear is the one that really drives home the value of Marth. Look at that legendary Lilina. She is the enemy of all Vantage units. You also have Summer Mia, who specializes in survival because of her player phase damage reduction. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Marth was the best unit to clear this map. A base kit Henriette probably makes short work of all of this, but this is a map that Marth should struggle with, and he doesn't. It's probably a good time to talk about builds. I have sold out on damage with this whole special spiral build to really take advantage of Shining Emblem. I've done a ton of sims, and I just think this is the best way to approach Marth. Now, there's some interesting arguments for Null Sea Disrupt, but I like having a Vantage sweeper that can take a few hits as opposed to a tank that can occasionally take advantage of Vantage. One-shotting in the days of 7-unit defenses is just hard, and you need to cram every bit of attack out of this unit that you can. But I'm about to hedge my bets here and say that Flayn really is his best partner. He's just not a good enough tank to absorb the hits that he needs to without her. There's an interesting argument that you could actually pair him with Gatekeeper. It's something that I want to explore because you can add 12 attack and 6 speed, but ultimately in the Sims, I just can't crank out enough attack to take out everyone. For those moments, I want Flame. Also, did you guys notice? I mean, there's another Cyros here, and she's about to go down. It's absolutely glorious. But you can see, I mean, Marth really makes short work of this. And if you go back and actually watch my video when I'm doing this, I was definitely a little nervous. This is still a unit that I'm getting used to. But Marth did a good job. There are still some things that he just can't handle though. The biggest is staffs. And that's why you have Mystic Boost. It's basically taking staves and negating their damage as much as you can. I mean, obviously there's some staves with enough damage that they're going to get through that, but you're probably not going to worry about that too incredibly much. Except for Flash Staff. If there's a Flash Staff on the map, you probably just have to pick another unit. Marth is just not equipped for that. And the problem is, there are a lot of Flash Staves. The other problem is Wind Sweep, and I know he has a lot of speed, but even looking at a +0 Selena, she can actually get Wind Sweep off, and he can't counter. In most cases. It's why in this case I have Flame with +6 speed as opposed to +6 attack. Basically what I'm saying here is that Marth is niche. He's not going to be a unit that's your main carry, but he is a fantastic tech unit. And when he works, it is oh so elegant. It's quite nice. I love Vantage strategies. I love the opportunity to get to use them again. But that niche is why he's better than Brave Dimitri. Dimitri was a one-trick pony. He needed to be an enemy phase tank, period. His one trick was damage reduction, and it was okay at the time, but even after his bonus season, I struggled mightily, and he was a brand new unit at that point. Marth I'm using outside of his bonus season, and when he decides to take on a map, he does a fairly good job with it. There are just maps that you will definitely not be able to use him on. So let's get to a unit that's even more niche and has a stranger skill. Here comes Gatekeeper.
No matter where I'm stationed, my only concern is protecting the gate.
Summoners, what do you do with this unit? I've looked at two options, Aetherraid's offense and defense, and now I haven't tried him on offense, but the problem is I don't think he provides enough support to convincingly win a place on a team. I understand there are some folks using him there, but the best I've seen is in a save huddle. In that case, I'd just rather be using Flame. He might provide some utility in taking out the Order's spam of Catria balls, and he certainly suppresses Wings of Mercy shenanigans, but ultimately he just doesn't make the cut for me. Now defense is another subject altogether, and I think he's a fascinating pick. Let's start off just running through my first defensive experiments. So I thought this first setup was interesting simply in the level of protection it buys you. You corner Gatekeeper, and he's essentially a near save and far save replacement. The biggest problem with this, it provides no turn 1 force. The offense can take their time, use a bolt tower, destroy buildings, and generally get their units set up in just the right position before they strike. It's still pretty powerful though, and this is an excellent Gale Force team that's going up against it. But they still lose 2 units. I do have to mention one of the things I do like about Gatekeeper is the additional pressure he adds once initiation has occurred. As he moves towards the offense, he severely limits movement. It can create some very interesting pins if he's used correctly. And can I also mention that a max invested Brave Eirika, Linja, or Legendary Claude actually has a hard time taking him out. I think Claude probably has the easiest time just because of no follow-up, and I've seen it done. But yeah. So it's interesting to look at. Ultimately, I'm not sure it fits in this meta just because things like Bolt Tower exist, and Bolt Tower basically trivializes this whole plan. It's why we started turn 1 forces in the first place. But honestly, I think this next setup is just a lot more interesting. Now, the biggest weakness of the Sigurd line is player phase strategies. And we talked about it with Marianne, but all the open space makes it fairly easy to set up and execute a Gale Force or Wings of Mercy strategy. Because these are so common, you're guaranteed that the other player has had practice against this exact style of team. Adding in Gatekeeper over your duo hero means you get a lot of protection, and basically that duo hero is untouchable until Gatekeeper is taken out. It's kind of fantastic. So you're keeping warp shenanigans down, you are making player phase strategies harder, and of course you're protecting against duo skills. I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is perfect. I just today was the victim of a masterful legendary Claude clear. It was amazing. And a lot of that same thing that helps him against all the other teams, the gravity, the high attack, the null follow-up, means that he can take this on fairly easily. So your question is, would a far save armor do better in this case? The answer is maybe? I'm not even sure. You know, it's potato at this point. But this is an interesting wrinkle that a lot of people aren't used to seeing. So for now, it's probably valuable. The one other thing we've discussed, and I don't have access to Catria, but it's an interesting thing to think about him on a Catria ball. And if you're not familiar, Catria balls take a lot from the old flyer balls, in which you keep all of your units clumped and move in as a wave towards the other team. Flyer skills made this possible. So by doing that with Gatekeeper, what you're doing is moving that obstruct line further and further down towards the offense and limiting what they can do. It creates some interesting interactions. I haven't played with it, and ultimately you're still worried about getting Gatekeeper baited out because, I mean, a good red unit is going to be able to take him out pretty easily when he's in his player phase as opposed to enemy phase. It's still something interesting to look at. Ultimately, I don't think we know what to do with this unit yet, but the potential is certainly there. I'm looking forward to seeing what other players come up with. I still have to label him the worst of this bunch, and that's not to say he's bad, he's just hard to use. If I have to completely rearrange the way I do things, that unit better be an absolute world beater. So far, I can't say this is one, although, again, the buffs are really nice. So I'm hoping we come up with more uses for Gatekeeper.
Tell me, would you be pleased to hear that I hope we never part?
Okay, Summoners, please don't shoot me when I say this. Eirika is the Lysithea of this year's banner. Now hold on, hear me out, because Lysithea was and is a good unit. I saved this one for last for a reason. I don't necessarily agree with the fact that Eirika is the best unit of this bunch, but I do think she's the most brain dead. You know exactly what she's going to do. She's going to deal damage, and she's going to deal a lot of it. That's what Lysithea did, and does. Ultimately, I think this is a better unit, but it's still the same role. What makes Eirika fun is that she slips effortlessly into some common roles. She is definitely better Ellawood in the frontline melee cav role on defenses. On offense, you've seen the PM1 video. She's an amazing Gale Forcer because she denies guard. The video I'm about to show you is fun because it's neither of those. This is the way Howdy is using Brave Eirika, and we all know Howdy is a pretty smart guy. Everyone has seen this setup by now. It's really annoying because it's actually fairly effective in the way that it's anti-meta. You need to crank out some serious damage in the player phase to break this up. Now I need to stop here and point out that that Surtur right there is in its bonus season. And that's basically a plus 12 Surtur. Howdy wanted me to make sure that I made that clear. But this really brings to light exactly how much damage Eirika can put out. You guys have seen how much punishment these take. and he's using AoE to just put in an enormous amount of work against this team. Now, think about this unit during its bonus season and consider what it's going to do to your near save armor when you try to tank it. It's going to be really interesting, so buckle up, folks. The big limitation for Eirika on offense is that she shines in Gale Force teams. These take a lot of time and effort to set up, and most of us don't want to invest quite that much into a strategy. The last thing I want to point out is her potential in Arena. This much damage combined with Kanto and her cavalry range makes her an absolute joy to play with. Her B skill combined with blue dual cavalry means she scores in the 185 bin, and that's really nice. Listen, if you chose Brave Eirika, you're not going to be disappointed. You're also not going to be surprised a whole lot, though. That about wraps us up. I said it at the beginning, but it bears repeating. I really like these units. I love the way that they encourage creative play. If you're a little frustrated with the way your favorite is performing, give them a little more time and realize that they most certainly will take a special team to fully function. I think you'll be happy with results. Just remember that their performance through their bonus season is not indicative of how they perform otherwise. Of all these units, I think Gatekeeper has the highest odds of being a bust. I hope that's not the case because he's so unique, but I'm having trouble visualizing exactly what he does. If you're using any of these units successfully, I'd love to hear how. Let me know down in the comments. If you like the episode, leave a comment or subscribe. If you'd like to chat, you can join the research and development server or direct message us on Discord. Our tags are in the show notes. Hope you have a wonderful day and schedule an appointment with your FEHologist real soon. Take care, folks.